You know that feeling when it's like 2 a.m., the house is completely quiet, and you are just staring up at the ceiling?
Oh, yeah. We have all been there.
Right. And your brain suddenly decides, you know what? It is the perfect time to run a highly detailed, multi-angle replay of this slightly awkward conversation you had like 3 years ago.
It's always 3 years ago, isn't it? Or maybe your brain isn't even living in the past tonight.
Yeah, maybe you're agonizing over a career decision you have to make next week.
Exactly. And you were playing out every single possible disaster scenario like some sort of chess grandmaster of anxiety.
It is just a profoundly universal experience. And the bitter irony is, well, the harder you try to force yourself to go to sleep,
Or aggressively command your brain to just let it go.
right, the louder and more vivid those thoughts actually become. You're lying there feeling incredibly isolated, just convinced that your own mind has completely turned against you.
You really start wondering, why is my brain actively torturing me? Like, am I fundamentally broken?
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are answering those exact questions by exploring an incredible piece of source material called The Architecture of the Overthinking Mind.
Such a fascinating
It
text.
really is, and our mission for this deep dive is super clear. We are going to unpack the biological and psychological mechanics of why you constantly get stuck in your own head.
Why you loop through those past regrets.
Yep, and why you paralyze yourself analyzing future decisions. And, most importantly, we're going to look at how to finally break that mental loop without feeling totally overwhelmed.
Because the text lays down this foundational principle right in the opening chapter that, honestly, it completely shifts how we need to look at this whole thing.
Okay, let's unpack this,
Yeah.
because that is a massive paradigm shift.
It really is. I mean, if you are listening to this and you struggle with chronic overthinking, it does not mean there is something chemically or fundamentally wrong with your brain.
Which is a huge relief to hear.
Right. It is not a personal failure, and it is certainly not a character flaw. The overthinking mind is actually a sign of a highly active, deeply ingrained cognitive system.
A system that's functioning exactly the way, hundreds of thousands of years of evolution designed it to work.
Exactly. Culturally, we tend to treat overthinking like this virus in our mental software.
Yeah, like a bug we need to just squash or medicate away or meditate out of existence.
But the source material flips that completely upside down. It argues that overthinking is, well, it's a feature, not a flaw.
A feature? I mean, from a purely evolutionary perspective, I guess the brain's primary job is not really to make you happy or peaceful, is it?
No, not at all. Its primary job is just to keep you alive. And to do that, the human mind operates as this incredibly advanced pattern recognition
Oh,
machine.
no, so that's always looking for clues.
Right. The text delves into what neuroscientists call the predictive processing framework. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment, taking in massive amounts of sensory data.
Just absorbing everything around you.
Yeah, and attempting to predict what is going to happen next, based entirely on your historical library of past experiences.
So it's basically running simulations to protect the organism.
What's fascinating here is that this is the biological foundation of complex planning, decision-making, and learning. Like, if you touch a hot stove as a child, your brain immediately catalogs that sensory data.
Right, it writes it down in the file.
Exactly. So the next time you even step near a stove, your brain's predictive engine fires up, runs a rapid simulation, predicts physical damage, and signals you to pull your hand back.
Before you even consciously register the heat. Wow.
Yeah. Overthinking is just that exact same primal survival mechanism, but it is being awkwardly applied to abstract complexities of modern social and professional life.
You know what it reminds me of? It is the biological equivalent of a smartphone's aggressive, predictive text algorithm.
Oh, that analogy actually maps perfectly onto the neurology described in the text. The mechanism is almost identical.
I mean, think about how your phone learns your typing habits. As you tap away, it is desperately trying to guess the end of your sentence before you even finish the thought.
Right, and it does that purely by scraping your past data.
Exactly. If you frequently text your partner, "I'm running late," the absolute second you type the words, "I am," the phone starts serving up running and late as the most likely options.
Yeah, it just autofills it.
And your brain is doing the exact same thing with your daily interactions. You walk into a performance review, and based on, I don't know, one slightly furrowed brow from your boss, your brain's predictive text kicks in.
It just says, oh, I know how this sentence ends.
Right. It says, "We are getting fired. We are going to lose the house." It just auto-completes the ultimate disaster based on every past rejection or failure it has on file.
And, the brain is doing this out of a misguided sense of care. It wants you to be prepared for the absolute worst-case scenario.
So it's trying to be helpful.
It really is. It serves up those catastrophic predictive texts so that you are never caught completely off guard. The text points out that we are the descendants of the early humans who overthought things.
Oh, that makes so much sense. Like the early human who heard a rustle in the bushes and assumed it was a deadly predator survived.
Exactly. And the human who assumed it was just the wind, well, they did not pass on their genes.
Right. They got eaten.
Yeah. So we are wired with this negativity bias because, historically, pessimism kept us alive.
But, okay, if this predictive engine is entirely natural, and if it's genuinely just trying to help us plan and survive, why does it feel so debilitating?
That's the core issue, isn't it?
Because being stuck in an overthinking spiral at 2 a.m. doesn't feel like I'm efficiently planning my future survival. It feels like I'm trapped in psychological quicksand.
Yeah, your brain is spinning up all these scenarios, but you're completely paralyzed.
Exactly. I can't do anything. I'm just stuck.
Well, the source text diagnoses that paralysis as a fundamental clash. It's a clash between the brain's ancient biological desire for absolute safety and the reality of an inherently unpredictable modern world.
So we want safety, but the world is chaotic.
Right. Overthinking crosses that invisible line from being a helpful adaptive planning tool into a severe cognitive problem when the mind begins demanding a level of certainty that simply does not exist.
Oh, I see. It becomes an obsession with eliminating all variables.
Yeah, precisely. The text actually digs into the neuroscience here, specifically highlighting the role of the amygdala.
That's the brain's threat detection center, right?
Yes, exactly. Because the brain is designed to avoid physical risk, the amygdala interprets psychological ambiguity or uncertainty as a literal physical threat.
Wow. So just not knowing what's going to happen feels physically dangerous to the brain.
It does. When you
Hmm.
face an uncertain outcome, like pitching a new idea at work or going on a first date, the amygdala sounds an alarm.
And then what happens?
Well, the prefrontal cortex, the logical problem-solving part of your brain, tries to silence that alarm by mapping out every single possibility. It tries to eliminate the feeling of threat by guaranteeing the outcome.
Which leads to those agonizing, endless loops we trap ourselves in. The text highlights these exact questions. We ask things like, what if I use the wrong tone in that email?
Or what if this career pivot completely ruins my trajectory?
What if I make the wrong choice and regret it forever? It is a fractal loop of what-ifs that just keeps zooming in on smaller and smaller details.
Notice the underlying motivation behind all of those questions, though. They are all demanding a guarantee.
Yeah, they really are.
They are demanding to pull the future into the present so it can be controlled. The overthinking mind operates under this cognitive distortion that if it just thinks hard enough, analyzes long enough,
And anticipates every conceivable variable.
right, then it can finally arrive at the one perfect 100% safe answer.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
If you were about to make a massive life choice, say you are buying a house, or you are choosing to drain your savings to start a business, shouldn't you aggressively try to figure out every single what if?
I mean, that sounds logical.
Right. In the business world, we call that doing your due diligence. It seems completely irresponsible to not try and eliminate risk before you jump.
That is a very fair point, but the text draws a very sharp mechanical line between productive planning and destructive overthinking.
Okay, what's the difference?
Planning is a finite process. You use your prefrontal cortex to gather the available data, assess the probable risks, and make an informed choice based on the information you actually have.
Finite. Okay, so it has an endpoint.
Exactly. Overthinking, on the other hand, is an infinite process. It is the refusal to make the choice until you have eliminated all potential risks.
Oh, wow.
And the hard truth that the source text grounds us in is this. Life does not offer complete certainty. Therefore, attempting to find perfect certainty doesn't resolve the problem.
It just generates an ever-expanding web of new questions.
You hit the nail on the head.
Because for every what if you manage to logically answer, your brain's predictive engine just spawns 3 new disaster scenarios to replace it.
Yep. It's like playing whack-a-mole.
Right. You resolve one concern about the house you're buying, you get the roof inspected, so that's handled. But instantly, your brain shifts to, well, what if the neighborhood zoning laws change in a decade?
What if a sinkhole opens up under the driveway?
Exactly. You can never reach the bottom of the well of uncertainty.
And this is where the biological trap really closes on you. Because action always carries some degree of risk, the overthinking mind categorizes all action as dangerous.
So it just wants you to freeze.
It keeps you trapped in the realm of theoretical thought, where it feels like you are doing something highly productive. You feel like you are analyzing and preparing.
But neurologically, what's actually happening?
Neurologically, your default mode network is just spinning its wheels without taking in any new data. You are completely stalled.
So if this predictive system is running in the background all the time, why doesn't it paralyze us constantly? Like,
Mm.
I don't overthink tying my shoes,
Yep.
and I don't agonize over making my morning coffee.
Right, because those are low stakes.
Yeah, but if I send a slightly risky email to a client, I will refresh my inbox for 3 hours and hyper-analyze every single word I wrote. Why do we only get trapped in these brutal loops over specific things?
The source material points to a fascinating trigger here, and it all comes down to the emotional stakes.
Emotional stakes.
Okay. The text introduces the concept of emotional attachment acting as an amplifier for the predictive engine.
So when a situation threatens something core to us,
Exactly. Our ego, our livelihood, our social standing, or our fundamental sense of identity. When those are on the line, the amygdala's alarm bell rings much, much louder.
and the higher the emotional stakes, the more terrifying the uncertainty becomes.
Yes. And when we are terrified, our brain is flooded with stress hormones,
Cortisol, right?
specifically cortisol, yeah. The text explores how a surge of cortisol physically alters brain function during these moments. High cortisol levels actually impair the prefrontal cortex.
Why, really? It literally shuts it down.
It takes it offline. The logical, rational part of your brain that knows how to put things in perspective is overpowered by the stress response,
So you are left entirely at the mercy of the amygdala.
which just keeps screaming, "Look for threats!"
Yeah.
We replay the tape of a past mistake over and over again, trying to retroactively analyze it to undo the damage.
Or we obsessively script future events because we are desperately trying to gain control over an uncontrollable situation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture laid out in the text, that illusion of control is such a powerful drug.
Oh man, here's where it gets really interesting because it reminds me of a very visceral physical sensation.
Oh, like what?
Have you ever been a nervous passenger in a car driven by someone else? Like you are sitting in the passenger seat, merging onto a busy highway in the rain, and you instinctively start gripping the dashboard.
Oh, yes, the white knuckle grip.
Exactly. Or you start pressing your foot down incredibly hard on a phantom brake pedal that doesn't actually exist on your side of the car.
That is a brilliant mechanical translation of what the brain is doing during rumination.
Right. Your knuckles are turning white, your jaw is clenched tight, your whole nervous system is entirely engaged. And in your head, because you are exerting so much physical and mental energy, you feel like by gripping that dashboard, you are somehow keeping the car on the road.
You feel like your intense focus is preventing a crash.
But structurally, mechanically, you aren't doing a single thing to change the trajectory of the vehicle. The driver is driving. All you are actually doing is exhausting your own nervous system and making the journey miserable.
Emotional overthinking operates exactly as our mental phantom brake pedal. The text delivers a very sobering realization here. Control over the future and control over other people's perceptions of us is largely an illusion.
It's totally an illusion.
Your brain tells you that by obsessively replaying an awkward social interaction from 3 years ago, you are somehow managing the social fallout. But you aren't.
Because it's already happened. Overthinking does absolutely nothing to prevent mistakes or alter the past.
It just drains your cognitive battery to zero.
Just absolutely depletes it.
It drains the battery, and as the text explicitly states, the only tangible outcome of overthinking is the delay of action.
Wow.
It keeps you in the passenger seat, white-knuckling the dashboard, instead of actually moving over to the driver's seat and steering your own life.
So what does this all mean for us? I mean, this realization that overthinking is just a phantom brake pedal that only delays action. It provides a massive pivot toward the solution.
Yes, it really does.
How do you let go of the dashboard? If the brain's predictive engine is an evolutionary feature we can't delete, how do we escape the passenger seat and actually start moving forward?
Well, the text suggests the very first step is aggressively managing our expectations about what recovery actually looks like.
Okay, managing expectations, how?
By accepting that breaking the pattern does not mean achieving a state of complete mental silence, you cannot command your brain to stop thinking.
Which is a huge relief to hear, honestly, because I think a lot of people try to aggressively suppress their anxiety.
Oh, people try all the time, but the source explores this psychological concept called ironic process theory.
Erotic process theory. What is that?
It dictates that deliberate attempts to suppress certain thoughts actually make those thoughts more persistent.
Like the pink elephant thing.
Exactly like that. If I tell you to absolutely not think about a white bear, your brain has to constantly check in to make sure you aren't thinking about a white bear.
Which forces you to think about it constantly.
Right. So instead of attempting the impossible task of eliminating thoughts, the Force suggests we have to radically shift our relationship to those thoughts.
Shift how we react to them.
Yeah. We have to stop treating every anxious prediction as a mandatory directive from reality and start viewing them as neutral data points that we can choose to engage with or ignore.
And to do that, the source material offers an incredibly simple yet completely grounding question that you can use as a circuit breaker.
Yes, this is crucial.
Especially when you catch yourself spiraling at 2 a.m. It is the golden rule of escaping the loop. You pause, you acknowledge the thought, and you ask yourself, is this helping me move forward?
Is this helping me move forward? It cuts straight through the cognitive noise.
It forces you to evaluate the mechanical utility of your thoughts, rather than arguing with the content of them.
Exactly. It suddenly doesn't matter if the catastrophic what-if scenario your brain just generated is technically possible.
Because technically anything is possible.
Right. The only metric that actually matters is, does dwelling on the scenario equip you to take the very next physical step?
And if the answer to that question is no, which, I mean, in the middle of a cortisol-fueled overthinking spiral, it almost universally is, then the text states it is time to shift gears.
Because the core philosophy of the source material is this: action creates clarity. Thinking alone does not.
Action creates clarity. I love the mechanics of that. You cannot think your way out of a thinking problem.
No, you have to act your way out.
But let's put this in a real-world context for a second, because taking action when you are caught in a massive anxiety spiral sounds deeply counterintuitive to our biology.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Let's say I've been staring at a draft of a highly sensitive email to my boss. I've deleted and rewritten it 20 times over the last 4 hours.
Classic overthinking trap.
My heart is pounding, my cortisol is high, and my amygdala is screaming that if I send this, I will ruin my career. How do I just act when my entire biological system is treating the send button like a live grenade?
That biological resistance is entirely valid, and it's exactly why the prefrontal cortex struggles to regain control in those moments.
So what's the workaround?
The source material addresses this paralysis by emphasizing a crucial manipulation of scale. The text introduces the concept of the micro-action to interrupt the cycle.
Micro-action, so shrinking it down.
Yes. You don't defeat the paralysis by taking a massive, risky leap. You defeat it by shrinking the scope of the action until it barely registers on the amygdala's threat radar.
Okay, so in the email scenario, the microaction isn't just closing my eyes and aggressively hitting send on a draft I'm unsure about.
Not necessarily. If hitting send triggers too much threat response, you shrink the action. The microaction might be saving the draft, closing the laptop, and physically walking into another room to get a glass of water.
Just a physical reset.
Exactly. Or it might be sending a different, entirely low-stakes email to a colleague just to get your brain used to the physical mechanism of hitting send.
Oh, that's clever.
Or if the situation really requires communication, the microaction might simply be sending a message that says, "Hey, I have some thoughts on this project. Do you have 5 minutes to check tomorrow?"
So you change the venue of the problem.
You change the venue, and more importantly, you alter your brain's state. When you take a physical action, any action, you force the brain to process new, real-world sensory data.
Which pulls you out of your head.
Right. This pulls your cognitive resources out of the default mode network, which handles internal rumination, and activates the task-positive network, which handles external interaction.
You snap the brain out of its predictive simulation and force it to engage with the present reality.
And as you get new data, the uncertainty shrinks. You send the text asking for a chat, they reply, "Sure, 10 a.m. works." And suddenly, the infinite web of variables collapses into a single, manageable reality.
It's like engaging a completely new neural pathway.
It is. Over time, as you consistently practice deploying these microactions, you begin to rewire the brain's association with uncertainty.
You build trust in yourself.
Yes, a deep neurological trust in your ability to handle the consequences of an action, even if the outcome isn't perfectly what you predicted.
You teach your nervous system that you can stumble, adapt, and recover.
And when the brain truly believes it can recover from a misstep, its desperate biological need for absolute certainty diminishes.
So the goal isn't to lobotomize our ability to think ahead.
No, not at all.
The goal is to utilize our prefrontal cortex when it's genuinely helpful, when we are actively planning, organizing, and solving a finite problem. And to develop the cognitive strength to let the thought go the millisecond it stops serving us.
And in that sense, we arrive at the ultimate reframing of our relationship with our own minds. The overthinking mind is not an enemy to be fought.
It's not a demon to be exercised or a flaw to be ashamed of.
Exactly, it's just an overzealous bodyguard.
It's a bodyguard who thinks a loud noise at a party is sniper fire and keeps trying to tackle you to the ground to save your life.
That's a great way to put it. It is simply a biological signal. It is a well-intentioned, albeit aggressive, alarm bell from a primal system that is just trying to protect you from pain, embarrassment, and failure.
But the reality of the human experience is that moving forward in life inherently requires stepping beyond that protective barrier.
It requires the courage to accept that you absolutely cannot control the
You
future.
cannot control what people think of you, and you cannot alter the past. But you can trust your present self to handle whatever reality arrives.
It is a profound neurological and philosophical shift from a mindset governed by fear and prediction to a mindset anchored in trust and adaptation.
Trusting that physical action will continuously provide the clarity that endless analysis never could.
Exactly. Action creates clarity.
Which brings us to a final, slightly provocative thought I want to leave you with as we wrap up this deep dive.
Okay, let's hear it.
The text notes that the entire architecture of overthinking relies on time travel. We overthink by continuously simulating past conversations, and we ruminate by aggressively predicting future disasters.
Our minds are endlessly oscillating between the ghosts of yesterday and the holograms of tomorrow.
Right. But if our overthinking mind only has the power to exist in the past and the future, what if the only place we are truly safe from it, the only place where the bodyguard finally clocks out, is by forcing our attention completely into the exact present moment?
Oh, wow. This raises an incredibly grounding realization. If your anxiety only lives in the what if of tomorrow, and your regret only lives in the if only of yesterday.
Then right now, in the physical reality of this very second, there is actually no problem to solve.
Right now, in this moment, you are just listening to a conversation. You are breathing. You are entirely okay.
And from that grounded space of being okay in the present, you have the power to choose your next microaction.
It all starts that one small step.
So, whatever you have been endlessly analyzing today, whatever imaginary dashboard you have been white-knuckling, I encourage you to take that one tiny physical step today.
Send the message, close the laptop, make the choice.
See what real-world clarity is waiting for you on the other side of action. We will see you on the next deep dive.